Welcome to the Propreneur Podcast, where we help practice owners become better entrepreneurs. I'm your host, Dino Watt. And once again, everybody, welcome to the Propreneur Podcast. I'm your host, Dino Watt. Excited to have you listening in again. And first of all, I want to thank you for being here and listening to this podcast. If you haven't shared it with a friend or a colleague, please feel free to do so. We always love to hear about new listeners. And today is one you're definitely going to want to share and tell your friends to listen to, because I get the honor of having a conversation with Oliver Gellis, who is from Orthofi, which is, if you're in the orthodontic space at all, you know how they have been spreading like wildfire, sharing their amazing message and helping you make more money, helping you make things easier for you, and stop the complaints about collecting all that money that's sitting out there for you. So welcome to the show, Oliver.
Thanks, Dino. Appreciate it.
I'm excited to have you. Like I said, we were doing a little pre-interview, and I've known about Orthofi for years now, seen their growth, seen what they're doing. But tell me a little bit about yourself first, and how you got involved with Orthofi, and then go into what Orthofi is all about.
Yeah, I am, an orthodontic industry lifer. I've been in the ortho industry over 15 years at this point. I cut my teeth working for Ormco in the clinical space, and ran their marketing and product development for almost 10 years, and gained a love for the industry and the practitioners and the challenges that they're facing. And then with Orthofi, I was able to take my other passion, which is, helping practices financially, and make it my full-time job. So that's what I've done.
Wow. And so when did you get involved with Orthofi?
I was actually involved before it launched. So
really?
I was a pre-launch consultant. And as soon as the product launched and they were able to bring me on full-time, I was excited to jump on.
Now, for people who don't understand what Orthofi is, and again, we have listeners not just in the ortho space, but private practice owners in general. So tell us a little bit about what Orthofi is, and what's your elevator pitch for Orthofi?
Yeah, Orthofi, pretty simply, is a software and a service model. And so basically what we do is we use software, which is very much like a CRM, to help practices onboard and acquire patients and convert them far more efficiently and at a far higher rate. So that stimulates growth. That's our main function, which is why we lead with get more yes and all of the good taglines we use. But then to make sure that the practice can sustain their focus on growth, that's where we bring in the services to help take out a lot of the headache and time drain around collections and insurance processing. So we have those services to make sure that the practice keeps playing offense.
That's really interesting. I would love to know a little bit more about that front end part that you were talking about obtaining clients, not practices, clients or patients, and then we'll go into the retaining them. But how do you focus on the obtaining them?
Yeah, so we did a lot of research going into launching the product around what it takes, not just to get a patient to start, but really what it takes to get them to start same day. So our rally cry as a company, and we have validated with tons of great data, is that if you can't get a patient to start same day, you are necessarily losing at least 20 to sometimes over 50 points of conversion rate likelihood. So that's what we've rallied around. So what does it take to groom a patient to start same day? What does it take to set the environment correctly? What conversion tools do you need in the consult room? And really lining up for the best possible conversion environment. So what our software does is when the patient calls, we line the patient up with intake forms that they can do conveniently from their own phone. We've seen much higher compliance rates on that. And then that gives the practice all the information they need. Then our services to collect insurance eligibility, make sure that when the patient comes in, that you're ready to pitch the accurate patient responsibility, so that now we can get down to brass tacks. And then of course we have our slider tool that is the innovator, and we kind of brought that to the industry, that uses open choice to really eliminate a lot of the barriers around finances, and that jacks up conversion rate.
So you're totally speaking my language right now, because a big thing that I talk about a lot is the before, during, and after process of a patient. And a lot of people don't put too much thought into the whole idea of what experience they need to have from the moment that they call in, right? How do we make that more convenient to them? And how do we set up our TCs? I just finished my TC sales intensive that I do, where I'm not so much about the presenting of a case. I know there are other companies out there that talk about how do you present the case well and do that. I consider that to be the first part of the game. Like in golf, you have the driving and then you have the putting, and the putting is getting the hole in the ball.
Yes.
Reverse that. You knew what I meant to say. The ball in the hole. And to be able to set those TCs up for as much success as possible. Same day starts. I tell my clients this all the time. The only practices that I see having true growth in their business are the ones who are focusing on same day starts. It is so vital. It's so important. And whatever we can do to help that patient get to yes at the end of that exam and to make sure they get it, it's huge. So you're playing a different game than what other people are playing. If I, from my assessment anyway, just looking at it from the outside, which is how I've grown my business, is by being able to do that, is you are looking at it from a holistic perspective of the patient, getting them to the yes. And then the second part is really, it's for the patient for sure, but it's also for the business owner to be able to make their life a lot easier there too. Talk about that part.
Yeah, so we didn't go into doing Orthofi thinking that we were going to do insurance, thinking that we were going to do patient collection, to be honest with you.
Interesting.
And I promise you that those parts of our business are not sexy. They're not easy. They're not wildly profitable. The reason why we did it is because what we saw in practices is that they were not focused enough on using and leveraging the patient acquisition tools, because a lot of the team was still stuck and way too allocated towards all of the revenue cycle management stuff. So they weren't dedicating the time to follow up on pending patients.
Yep.
Because they were busy chasing down, Johnny's insurance check or Susie's, patient payment. And so we wanted to say, well, what if we took that on? Could you guys go back to playing offense? And that's really how we position it.
What I love about that is that if you think about it, so if you're listening and you have a smaller practice where maybe your TC is also your financial coordinator, is also your insurance claim collector, like in that space, then here you've freed up a lot of that time and energy from the TC so she can focus on what she actually is supposed to be doing, which is sales. Your TC
Correct.
is your sales department. And then if you have a bigger practice, you've most likely created the position of insurance claims collector or even financial coordinator be out of necessity, where now you could take that person and have them actually be better at running your business or doing more of the financial side for your business, not the collection side of it. So that's a huge benefit that I don't think a lot of people think about.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, not a lot of people that go into looking at Orthofi as an option think about it. And even quite frankly, some of our customers, they get so comfortable with us doing that stuff that they kind of lose sight that the benefit is not so much that we're doing the work, but the benefit is what we've liberated them to do. And so 100%. Anecdotally, for the ones that are raving fans, they really see that they start thinking a lot more aggressively about their growth and their scale. They start looking at options to acquire practice locations and adding satellites, and they don't have as much anxiety about scaling their business because they know that we're behind that effort and that all they've got to worry about is how can I staff to get the offense where all of the defense, they're relying on us.
That's great. That's awesome. I talk often about the evolution of the practice, right? Like 10 years ago, talking about same day starts, talking about not charging for records and having that all combined. That just wasn't there. I mean, 15 years ago, doing Invisalign wasn't something a lot of people were into. Yeah. So here's this evolution of what's happening. Well, what I love is you really focus on the revolution of what's happening. And that revolution, I believe, is happening because of a demand that we have with millennials, with millennial moms that are popping up big time, with convenience of people wanting more and more convenience. How are you positioning yourself as a company to be the leader in that revolution?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, there's so many trends right now. I tell people often that the last, I would say, 2 years has had more change
Mhm.
than in my previous 13. All the trends that you've mentioned, you layer on that there's a trend or some kind of inertia around consolidation and practices being rolled up either by clinicians or by PE firms. You've got probably the most real competitive consumer threat that we've ever had. Not that I'm a big believer that we should run for the hills. I
Right.
actually think it's going to give us a great, tide lifting opportunity.
Yep.
But here's one thing that everyone should know that's watching: the old way to do business will not be feasible coming right up.
Yep.
And so it's really just really understanding that business leadership is not a nice to have, it's a must have. And so
Yeah.
really it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. You're giving them an edge in what is to come. And boy, I'd rather if you're listening to this right now and you're even thinking, well, maybe I'll do that next year or in 2 years, like the sooner the better, because it is happening faster. You're right. The last 2 years has been very interesting to watch. I come from, the corporate side of things, the business side of things, where I'm looking at going, you guys aren't recognizing what's going to happen because of technology, whether it be 3D printing, like you said, the direct to consumer type situations. But those are huge opportunities. And if you can be that practice that is showing people, oh, no, 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 we're ahead of the curve. We're actually helping instill this revolution to make it easier for you, more convenient. Heck, even going down to doctorless exams or virtual exams. Those are all things that are going to be happening. And you are providing a service for them to actually not just be a part of it, but really help it grow their business in ways that they weren't able to have before. So tell us a little bit about what are some of the biggest challenges you see with some of these offices or some business owners that Orthofi is determined to overcome, help them overcome, so that they see it Orthofi as a no-brainer.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of philosophy, to be very honest with you.
Mm,
I feel like we talk about and we sell philosophy much more so than actually selling a product.
interesting.
There's some concepts and ideas that orthodontics has been built on that are flawed, that we've, after collecting data on over 1.5 billion in orthodontic production and 750,000 consult outcomes, that we're challenging a lot of the pillars. So for example,
Yeah, I was going to say, give us an example of one. I'm excited.
yeah, so the orthodontic practice, is really been pretty risk averse. The focus in an orthodontic practice has been more about risk elimination or risk management. And quite frankly, like the risk is already very, very low in orthodontics. It's enviable to almost any other business.
Yep.
And so the name of the game isn't so much to eliminate, default risk and all that stuff. It's really growth. Their P&L demands it. And so these PE firms that are coming in, they know that, and they're going to do whatever it takes to grow because they know that almost anything they do will be accretive to the bottom line. And so really getting practices to get off of, how can I eliminate anyone from defaulting? Default rate should be managed, but it's a fact of life, and you should think in aggregate versus transactionally. So a great example is, I've had a number of conversations where a doctor will ask me, okay, I get why you guys want to be more flexible, and I understand that I'll get more starts from it, but what if I get an Invisalign patient that starts with me, gets their liner trays, and then disappears and doesn't pay me? Well, I'm stiffed. I've paid the lab fee, and then I'm out the lab fee. And my answer is yes, you are. You're out the lab fee for that patient. And I always say, like, has this ever happened? And one time I got the yes, pounding
That one time back in 80.
Exactly. And so I said, like, okay, how long ago? And it said, he said 2.5 years ago. And then I quickly did the math and I said, well, let's say you had been more flexible. Other than that guy, how many more starts per year on Invisalign could you have gotten by being more flexible? And thankfully, he was honest with me. He said about 10 more a year.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I'm not great at math. I am. But $5,000 in production is what you gave up to protect yourself from one $1,500 lab fee. So that's the kind of philosophy and financial understanding that we spend a lot of time on. Otherwise, we're going to be giving them a tool that ends up in the drawer.
Yeah, and how many of those do they already have, right? That whether it be that actual physical product or that software that they're just not using. I will admit a lot of times because they're just not willing to take the time to put the education in behind it. And so it becomes another thing. But for them to see the value of this thing, it's funny. I think to your story, I think I love the book Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. It's a great book, awesome. And one of the things I don't think a lot of people realize that is the outcome of that book is you're not the outlier. Like your one-time thing doesn't justify you never doing something again, or
That's right.
like stop thinking you're the outlier. You're not.
That's right.
So that's really cool. What other of the philosophies that you think you see out there that you feel are flawed that Orthofi helps fix? Because I love that concept of really looking at our own businesses and our industry and going, ooh, that's built on a faulty precept. Like one of the things I talk about often is this idea that when it comes to sales, going back to sales again, it is one of the easiest setups ever that people are walking in there. Every mom knows a range at least about how much they're going to pay for braces because they went on Facebook and they asked everybody, what did you pay for braces? So to pretend like, oh, I didn't know they're so expensive is not true.
Right.
And our only job is not to screw up the sale because they're walking in there to get braces. That's the only reason they're walking in.
That's
so Orthofi obviously gives you a tool to do that. But are there other philosophies that you look at and you're like, oh, that's got to change?
Yeah. So, I mean, I love that one, right? So just for everyone listening, I have to go home and talk to my blank is not true, right? So let's put that one back in the shed. No, but philosophically, another thing that's hard because, to be honest with you, what makes orthodontists great clinicians is that they're able to focus so much transactionally when it comes to the clinical. They make that 3x3 window that they're looking in all their world, but then when they go to the financial, they need to be able to step back and look in aggregate, right? So when it comes to cash flow, so I think everyone is over the flexibility. I think that's more 5 to 10 years ago that people were stuck in, I don't need to be more flexible. I think people have gotten over that one. The next hurdle is, how do you be more flexible and figure out a way to manage cash flow and manage risk while doing it, and in aggregate, give yourself a healthy balance? So another one of those philosophical things is, I only want to take on, A patients, right? Well, to grow, what you're doing is you're reaching deeper into your market. The chances of you getting to your growth goals by purely winning the A patients from a competing practice are low. So how do you reach deeper and get some of those Bs and high Cs using the common parlance without actually hurting your bottom line? So those are some of the tools, and that's some of the data that we apply into the software to help kind of make that, the easy button. But taking on higher risk is not per se a flaw. You have to take on higher risk to grow more aggressively than the market, but you got to do it in a smart way.
Yeah, I often tell doctors that they need to know who their ideal client is, not because that's the only client they want to deal with or they're going to deal with, but because knowing that your marketing is more sharp, your outlook is very focused. But because of that, you will get on the periphery, the people, like I often say, I market primarily to orthodontists, but I have a financial planner who found out about me, and he's not who I market to, but he's on the periphery. He's still a great client. He's still ideal, but he's not the main focus. So to have that myopic view of, oh, I only want A, sure, we all only want A clients, but you're doing yourself a disservice not being able to say, well, how can I also serve the B and the C? Yeah.
Right. And not to go finance, nerd.
Oh, let's go there. Come on now.
Well, because this is, and how I said earlier, PE firms and all this understand these financial principles.
Yes.
Probably the most important financial principle that I want every orthodontist to understand is about variable contribution margin. And what that means is when they think about acquiring a patient, they know what their bottom line is. They know if they make 50 cents on the dollar or 45 cents on the dollar, they do that math pretty quickly. But what they don't realize is when they're a 500-star practice and they grow 10%, the extra 50 cases that they start, that doesn't come in at the 50% operating margin. It comes in at a much higher 70%
Sure.
operating margin because all of their fixed expenses are already paid for and locked.
Right.
So a lot of times they'll talk themselves out of opportunities like limited aligner treatment at a lower cost, or taking on a C patient because they know they're going to lose some default. And the truth is, like, if they're incremental, if you got this patient that you wouldn't have gotten by doing something, you're actually making them more profitable than all of your other patients.
Yeah.
So it makes you more aggressive. If you think about that, that's another big philosophy point for us.
All right. Well, you probably run into this then too, because you're making such a great point. And what I know there's some guys out there saying in their car right now, because I've heard it before, it's like, but if I only do the limited, then my name is on that smile. I'm not giving him the signature treatment. I can't do that. That is unethical. It's not me. I have to give that. Like, I know you hear those guys saying that, right? So what's your response to that?
Well, my response is I would rather that they do the limited option when they're presented with both options, but I'd rather they choose a limited option with a specialty orthodontist that is highly skilled than for them to not be able to afford a $5,000 treatment and end up doing a Smile Direct Club because there was no other option. So I trust orthodontists to nail a limited treatment case far better than their alternative.
There's the ideal of what we hope for. We want them to have the full treatment, right? The whole bit. And then there's a good, better, best syndrome, right? The best is that. And then the reality, heck, like you said, I'd rather have them be treated by you. And by the way, just them being treated by you gives you the possibility of later on finessing that. They want more. They realize, they do want more. That's at least a possibility. Whereas if you're like nope, I'm not going to do it, they're out the door, then you have 0% chance. It's kind of like that saying in business, right? I'd rather have 10% of, I'd rather have a piece of 10% of something than 0% of nothing, right?
Absolutely.
So I totally messed that up, but you know what I was talking about.
I don't know if you've seen that commercial. There was a great commercial where, there was a barber who had a big corporate, haircut salon come in across the street with a big banner advertising $6 haircuts. And then it shows the business owner thinking about it. And then he counters with, we fix $6 haircuts.
Oh, nice.
And he does really well. So I actually think, back to the whole threat from consumer, products, that's where I think the tide can be lifted is, there's a We Fix Smile Direct Club opportunity there.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you don't have to let them go there first. You can create that even from your upsell path of getting someone unlimited and then say, hey, if you want more, I can fix that too.
It's funny you mentioned that because at the I do a 3-day class for leaders only. It's called the Propreneur, and in that class, this last time I said, oh, man, how cool would it be? Because I always throw out different ideas and hey, let's play with this. Was create a Smile Regret Club buyback. And it's like, okay, so if you did Smile Direct Club and you are regretting it, come back to us, bring us your liners, and if you bring in your liners, there's 10% off or whatever.
Right.
Like there's an opportunity there, and they're all like, oh, we'll get sued, which I don't think we have to worry about too soon with the way that the Smile Direct Club stock market's going, or IPO's going. But either way, how do you create something that's funny, that's unique, that is attention grabbing? Instead of pointing out how upset you are about the thing, make that thing your opportunity, right? And so I absolutely love that. Okay, so where is Orthofi going? I would love to hear what's the future so that people can realize and want to get on this bandwagon even faster before it even starts moving faster. What's the future of Orthofi?
Yeah, good question. I mean, there's a couple of really important directions. So the first thing is we've invested about $6 million over the last 12 months at upgrading the services from a software and service combination. We're working more with carriers. We're getting, workflows. So there are a number of things that are going to make and upgrade our eligibility claims and patient AR services even more intuitive, even faster, even more direct. So, it's going to become the absolute, best way for practices to get all this stuff done. But the stuff that excites me, because I'm a marketing guy at heart, is the CRM. So, we're hard at work building what will be, the industry best CRM, not because it has 100 more features than others do. In fact, we really are trying not to over-engineer it, but it'll be just the right size. It'll be the Goldilocks CRM, for orthodontic practices. That really is intended to be the easy button. So we want to also, add or partner and expand with online scheduling, which is another big part of same day starts. Like,
yes,
whether we build it or whether we partner with it, it's all about how do we get that patient who's interested in treatment and really close that gap from where they're standing to being an orthodontic patient.
So I'm going to ask a weird question, but since you're talking CRMs, I have always found it fascinating that I'm sure of companies like an Infusionsoft or those type of things. I've always found it fascinating that a lot of the softwares that are out there don't incorporate not only a really good campaign manager for emails that I can say, oh, Johnny or Oliver called in and he is interested in treatment. I got his information. And now I get to put Oliver in a campaign where for the next 6 days, 8 days, 20 days, Oliver's getting an email, learning about our company, giving him education. And then if Oliver does something, then it's tagged to, oh, he actually is now a patient. Now Oliver's going to go over into this other campaign where, or on my OBS program, so that every month mom's getting a new thing. Are you doing anything like that?
We have a very limited version of what you talked about. So we basically prompt the office to do the next touch, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but we're not doing as much automated marketing as we want to, because to do it right, like doing it kind of half is almost worse than not doing it at all.
Sure.
So we've been really building, the back end and what will be the front end to a really powerful marketing automation product. Because you're right, awesome. These team members, they think they're being pushy. They think I can't touch them a third time. And so even if the doctor says, hey, you need to call them again, they're kind of wincing. Oh, I don't want to bother them. And so that's where the automation, comes in, is
so important.
They might only have to make one call, but the patient's going to get as many as 5 or 6 touches, in an 8-week period.
So important. I literally was on a phone call today. I deal with this all the time, right? Because my rule of thumb is until they tell me no, I'm going to keep calling them. I'm going to keep, we don't do this 3-week thing, 3-month thing and just let them sit there. So I have an office where I really push to do that. And I was like, no, just keep calling. And on the call today, the TC was like, you will not believe this. I have this mom who I swear I've been trying to get a hold of for the last 4 months. I really have kind of put her on the back burner of, well, she obviously isn't interested. That's why she's not calling me back. And I called her again, like you told me to. And she said to me, thank you so much. I've been remodeling my entire kitchen and bathroom. I haven't even thought about you guys, but I know we have to get this done. Set up an appointment for next week to get little Junior's braces on. Right. That was a $7,000 phone call.
Absolutely.
So yes, I love that automation side of it. So glad.
And also targeting, right? I mean, that's what the big boy stuff does, is because we get the data on the patient and because we have all this outcome data. So, telling you when to send an email, like we have data on how the cliff of likelihood to start. So catching them before they fall off the next cliff. Yes. That's part of the intelligent automation. And then the other part is, marketing treatment to an adult female is very different than an adolescent 13-year-old boy. Obviously, you're not marketing to the 13-year-old boy, you're marketing to their parents, but the messaging is far different. So when you say campaigns, it's not so much having the one, pre-start campaign. It's really based on the demographics of the prospective patient, of having campaigns that auto tag. So if you've got an adult female, they're going into campaign 2 instead of campaign 1. So all of that stuff. And
to that point, and I'll end with this point, is that you then also have, it goes deeper with, now, like I mentioned earlier, you got the millennial moms with the 7-year-olds, and that you're going to speak to them a little differently than you are to the 35-year-old mom with the 14-year-old boy, right? So you've got a shift there.
And the compression of the timing. So what our data clearly shows is you can't schedule an adult 3 weeks out. Your chances of getting them to actually come in, show up, and start treatment go down dramatically. Whereas The erosion for an adult, a parent, for a patient, there's some tolerance for that. But with an adult, you really need to get them within 72 hours, but your real window is 10 days. So it drops a little bit after 72 hours, and then it drops pretty significantly after 10 days. So,
Valuable.
offices just sort of automatically scheduling people out 2 to 3 weeks. No, they need to think of it differently.
Okay, so you just brought up something that's so important, because I'm passionate about this, is really being strategic about your scheduling versus, hey, there's a hole, let's fill it. Because if you are in that habit of, here's a hole, let's fill it with anybody, when that adult calls in and you don't have a space for them in the next 72 hours, you're losing a potential patient. But so I was just having this conversation with somebody. If you look at your schedule and you're going, oh, look, we have a full day of 7-year-olds, your likelihood of closing all 7-year-olds is pretty low, even on a phase 1, unless everybody gets a phase 1 no matter what, but most likely not.
Yep.
So I have a doctor who right now has the problem. He's like, we're so busy, we're having to schedule a good 3 to 4 weeks out. And that's a concern. And I said, oh, great. Now you get to actually realize what I've been telling you. Now you get to be strategic about your scheduling. I call it scheduling for dollars. I want to put the right people in the right position, knowing that I can get my numbers. As an entrepreneur, I can look out to next month and know basically what my income is going to be because I scheduled it that way.
Right.
And so, yeah, this is a great tool. I love it. I love what you guys are doing. I love what you have already done and how you've been changing things. And I know that your guys' goal is obviously continued growth and to make sure that you're helping out as many people hit all of their financial goals, all their business goals out there. So I think it's awesome. We've come to the portion in our show where I get to ask some rapid fire questions with some rapid fire answers. You ready to play?
Yep.
Awesome. So Oliver, what is the most expensive thing that you see private practice owners are missing in their practice?
So not a product, not a tool. The most expensive thing they're missing is time and focus on pending management. They're losing tons of dollars by not spending time on that.
So true. So true. Love it. What's a book that you believe every private practice owner should read?
Because practice success is based so much and rooted in team dynamics, I just finished a great book called The Culture Code.
Nice.
And it's really about establishing organic and quick and high functioning team dynamics with cross functions. So that the team that all plays different roles can play together without having to spend too much time or effort working on it.
Love it. I am obviously, I'm a huge culture fan. As a matter of fact, in my book, The Practice RX, right, I focus on culture and team performance. So now combine that with what you just maybe read and what you've seen. What do you see as the biggest challenge when it comes to that culture and the team dynamic?
The first thing is hiring for people who are going to be invested in the success of the practice.
Yes.
That is the number one trait that every practice should be going for, especially with a TC, of course, but with any team member. And then really, I'm a huge believer in incentives. I think that, people, sure, they can be invested in the success of the practice without that, but I'm a huge fan of having focused, limited time, monthly or quarterly programs and games where the team can rally around a practice growth incentive that where they all win in it, where at the end of the day, if the practice wins, they can bring something home to their family and it's memorable, it gets people charged up, and it's invaluable. We always think that the incentive needs to go towards the patient. So when I want to stimulate my starts, I should increase my discounts, or I should, when the truth is that moves the needle actually less in our experience than getting the team rallied around how many same day starts can we get this month, or how much, whatever the goal is. It can be clinical goals. It can be debonds. It can be anything. But incentives are, I think, a huge deal.
That's awesome. And it's so true that, that's how you build a team culture. I often point out that even the manager in the football team gets a Super Bowl ring if you win the Super Bowl. Like everyone wins. So that, that the sports manager or whatever.
Right.
So true. And I'm such a fan of that. I'm such a fan of incentivizing that. Before we finish up with the questions, how can people reach out to you and get connect with you?
The easiest way is just to go to startmoresmiles.com. If you're a texting person, text more smiles to 72,000. Either way, you can get a lot of great information. And if you, and speak to somebody, if you want to go live. So.
You said something earlier about like the way business has been done in the past is not how it will be done in the future. And you have to recognize we can't be thinking, well, that's just the way we've always done it. Reach out to Oliver and find out just if it's a right fit for you, to see if it's something that, can add any value whatsoever into your practice. In today's day and age, you need that little bit of an edge to overcome all of the challenges that are out there with business. So can definitely be one of them. Go check it out and see if it is. So Oliver, what's the best advice that you've ever received when it comes to life or business?
My favorite is there is only do or do not. There is no try.
All right.
For you Star Wars geeks out there, you know what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah, definitely, for sure. And closely behind that is what, the Mr. Miyagi, right? Either do or do not. Middle is squash like grape.
That's right. That's right.
All right. So best resource or tool that every private practice owner should be using in their practice right now.
I said it before, it doesn't have to be Orthofi, but I hope everyone out there invests in some kind of technology. CRM.
Hey, I'll say it. Go for Orthofi. Like, check them out. It might be the best thing you've ever done for your practice. My goal always with my doctors is, I tell them, I said, look, my job is not to give you another job. So Orthofi to me is when, again, this is purely an interview. And the reason why we wanted you guys on the show is because I've seen your growth. I know what you guys can do. And I think it's a huge service. But from what I've been able to witness and watch, and I get nothing out of it other than to see my clients make their life easier. And whatever you can do to find yourself that makes your life easier, to find something to make your life easier, that's what I would highly recommend. Well, Oliver, you've been a great guest. Thank you so much for all of your insights. And I love your philosophies. I love the way that you look at business and see the importance of it. We are so aligned and so much. We're going to have some more continued conversations after this, because you're awesome. I love it. And I love what you guys are doing there with Orthofi. So thank you for being here.
Thanks, Dino. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's been lots of fun, everybody. Thank you so much for being a part of the Propreneur podcast, where, as you know, our goal is always to help you be more proactive, more productive, and make more profit in your life and business. Thanks for joining us. Again, if you haven't shared this with a friend or family member or a colleague, please do so. We'll see you on the next episode of the Propreneur podcast. Thanks so much again for listening to the Propreneur podcast. We really appreciate your support. If you haven't subscribed already, please make sure you do so. Also, if you feel like you might be a good fit for our podcast as a guest, or know somebody who you think would be, go ahead and email us at dino@dinowatt.com. Again, thanks for support. We'll see you on the next episode.